Judge, when you were Attorney General, you were the country's chief law enforcement officer. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about some of the events that we have seen in recent days, if that's okay. The law enforcement officers have killed 2 Americans, exercising free speech. While investigations were underway, the Trump administration accused both of intending to murder federal agents, despite evidence to the contrary. It's an unprecedented level of aggression from the federal law enforcement against U.S. citizens in recent memory. And I wonder what your perspective is, especially on the White House response.
When I'm asked questions such as that one, I always remind people that I don't know what I don't know. I mean, all I know is what I've seen reported. Sometimes what gets reported, it's not really totally accurate or it's incomplete. But based on what I've observed, and I think based on what most Americans have observed, and again, I don't know all the facts, but in connection with some of these events, it seems like we're going through an unprecedented, dangerous time. And I worry about what's going on in our country, and I think a lot of Americans are worried about it. We all of us, of course, believe that if we have dangerous criminals, murderers, rapists in this country, particularly from other countries, but even Americans, they should be found, they should be arrested. And if they're not American citizens, and if they're not going to be prosecuted, they should be removed from our country. But the way that we're enforcing immigration today, to me, is that it sends a terrible message, not just to the American people. It sends a terrible message to our people around the world in terms of what America is today as opposed to what it was when Ronald Reagan left in that famous last speech and talking about the value of immigrants and how much they've contributed and why we are, as a country, are stronger and better because we have welcomed immigrants and they're part of the fabric of our society. I don't think that message is out there anymore. And I think that really does sadden me. And I think that makes America weaker. I really do. And I think it emboldens our enemies. And so for all those reasons, I worry about it. Obviously, the president's entitled to do what he believes is necessary if it's lawful. And if he believes it's lawful, then I guess he's going to do what he thinks is lawful. And hopefully the courts and hopefully Congress will take action and address it.
I think I'd like to add.
I hope you do add, Becky.
My great-grandparents and Al's great-grandparents were born in other countries. And our grandparents were born here, but they were from immigrants. And I think we'd be hard-pressed to find an American who's not doesn't have
descendants from immigrants.
Right, yeah,
we all
exactly.
are.
We all are. And I just want to make that point.
I think it's a good point. While we're on current events, the Justice Department that you once led just released 3 million pages of documents relating to the investigation around Jeffrey Epstein. And I wonder if there's any commentary you have on that investigation.
I can assure the listeners that I'm not going to be mentioned in the Epstein documents.
But so many are. Many dozens of high-level politicians, world leaders, business leaders are.
Yeah, I think there was great hope, particularly amongst the victims, that when Congress passed the law about the release of these files, that there would finally be some level of justice. And obviously, Department of Justice, for reasons which they say that they needed time to redact and protect innocent victims, innocent people, they blew past the deadline required by the law, and then they've now made this release. And my understanding is that they said there will be nothing else released.
The Deputy Attorney General has said that.
Right. I think this whole episode is embarrassing. I think it's an embarrassment to this administration, to the Department of Justice, a complete failure of the department to abide by the law. That's the role of the Department of Justice, to enforce the law. And here we have a department that's not doing that. And I understand this is a tremendous challenge, and these are millions of documents. You do want to be careful about making sure that innocent people are not victimized again by the release of these documents. But the what appears to be in some cases selective redactions and the selective release of documents, drip, drip, drip process. It sends a terrible message. And I think it's legitimate for the American people to wonder, what are you hiding? And so there's nothing to hide. It's not my job, of course, to direct the president or suggest or recommend to the president what he should do. But he's in charge of the executive branch in the Department of Justice. He can simply say to the Attorney General, release all the documents, except for those, of course, redacting the names of innocent victims. But that hasn't been done. And it hurts him. It hurts the administration, hurts the image of of America around the world, because the president seems very eager to order things, to exercise executive power in various other areas. Why he hasn't done so in this case? There is one argument, though, that one might make that it's good that he's not. Typically, when I was in the White House as Attorney General, or White House counsel, then as Attorney General, I wanted to make sure President Bush did not get involved in making decisions relating to the enforcement of the law, because that creates the perception of politics being involved. And so I would tell the president, when I was White House counsel and John Ashcroft was going to do something as Attorney General, Mr. President, you need to stay away from that. That's a decision that's got to be made at the Department of Justice. And so for the most, as a rule, I would say you want to keep the president out of telling the Department of Justice what to do. But in this particular case, this would be one notable example where I would say the president should be directing the department, release all the documents as soon as you, absolutely immediately, assuming you've got the redactions made to protect the identities of innocent victims.
I think the redactions have been inconsistent. So some places the victims are redacted and other places they're not. So that's a tough job too.
Yeah, Becky, that was my next question for you. Hundreds of women, these victims, have come forward now and said the redactions are not complete,
right,
and our identities have been released.
Mm-hmm.
Please pull all 3 million pages off and go through and redact again. Your background now is in trauma-informed social work.
Right.
Before that, you did volunteer work with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Mm-hmm. I
just wonder what commentary, what thoughts you might have on the impact to victims here and the kind of the disregard
it's
for
terrible.
victims.
I mean, I feel for those women. They purposefully haven't come forward and said, I'm a victim and I want to be known and I want justice. They have to try and navigate a life where they have something that's deeply painful and yet has been made public, and it's going to be different for every one of them. But you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's been done.
The way that this has been handled, from the very beginning, has been a disaster for the American people, certainly for this administration,
and
the victims.
The victims, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just hope Ghislaine Maxwell is never released. She's clearly not a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, and the fact that she's been moved to a prison that is not secure, from what I understand,
mm-hmm.
it's concerning.
Yeah,
she should not be pardoned, released. She needs to be held accountable.